The Roman Empire, an ancient superpower, renowned for its splendour, sophistication, and savagery.
Let the games begin!
The Romans ruled vast territories that stretched from the wild Atlantic coast of Britain to the parched deserts of the Middle East. I'm travelling across the Roman world to discover Rome at the height of her potency and prestige, when Rome's rulers...
What have you done?
...became intoxicated by power and excess.
The stubborn old dogs of the Senate will be no match for the three of us.
In this programme,
Cards.
we turn the spotlight on one of the most infamous emperors of all, Nero.
I am your lord and emperor, and I demand your service!
His extravagant and corrupt behaviour trampled over the needs of his people and brought the first imperial dynasty of Rome
What an artist the world is losing.
to a bloody end. The emperors who followed fought to regain the support of the citizens of Rome. And they did so with a grand and cruel gesture. The greatest arena of entertainment ever seen. The Colosseum. About 150 miles southeast of Rome, on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, is the site of an extraordinary Roman villa. Buried for over 1,500 years, its secrets have yet to be fully uncovered.
I am incredibly lucky to get access to this archaeological site because this gives us a completely unique glimpse of Rome at the height of its imperial power.
This magnificent villa was built at the dawn of the Age of Emperors, an era of prosperity and extravagance.
All this is just spectacular, but there's actually another reason why this site is so exciting. There's still masses of excavation work to be done here, and some archaeologists think that buried underneath here, there's another villa that belonged to Rome's first and arguably greatest emperor, Augustus, who we know died somewhere close to here in a gorgeous house in 14 AD.
Digging through the volcanic ash deposited by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, archaeologists are getting closer to tangible evidence from the age of a man who truly changed the world.
I find this all so thrilling because Augustus is one of the world's greatest figures. The man who killed off the 450-year-old Roman Republic to establish a dictatorship, an imperial system that endured for close on 1,500 years.
Augustus ruled for 44 years, the first and longest imperial reign in Roman history. Arguably, he did more than anyone else to build the image of the glorious Roman Empire that we recognise today.
As the Emperor Augustus, he drafted the blueprint for imperial success. Military conquest, headline-grabbing monuments, handouts to masses, and blatant, meticulous image control.
But Augustus had no son. Instead, he adopted his stepson and named him successor, the Emperor Tiberius. A pattern was set. Emperors chose their successor rather than passing to the eldest son. This led to feuds as family rivals jockeyed for position. Assassination and murder became commonplace as the succession passed to Caligula and then to Claudius, the conqueror of Britain. Despite the bloodletting, somehow the first imperial dynasty survived and Rome flourished. But all that would come to an end with the next infamous emperor. His turbulent rule would destroy his family line and bring chaos and civil war to the Roman Empire.
The story starts in 54 AD, when a golden-haired 16-year-old Nero succeeded his decrepit stepfather, the Emperor Claudius, to become the most powerful man in the known world.
According to some Roman historians, trouble started early in the reign, as behind the scenes, two people battled for control of this teenage emperor. The first was Nero's mother, Agrippina, great-granddaughter of Augustus, widow and niece of the late Emperor Claudius. And the second was his tutor, the celebrated philosopher Seneca.
Of all our lessons, this was always the most important.
That I must show mercy.
Yes. No virtue is greater than mercy for an emperor or a prince.
Is that so, my dear Seneca?
Lady Agrippina, do not agree.
No.
Nero's mother was the dominant figure in Nero's early years.
Come, Seneca.
Agrippina had built her power base during the rule of her husband, the Emperor Claudius. And we can find intriguing evidence that she planned to expand her influence during the reign of her young son. This is Aphrodisias in modern-day Turkey, but in the 1st century AD, it was a thriving Greek city under Roman rule.
The people of Aphrodisias, like those right across the empire, would have celebrated the accession of the new emperor. But just look at how they're doing it here. These sculptures would originally have adorned a prominent public building, and you've got Nero on the left here, and then over here is his mother, Agrippina, who is crowning him with a laurel wreath. Now, this is really remarkable because it suggests that Nero's subjects thought that Agrippina was the kingmaker, that she was the power behind the throne. For ancient Rome, which was a conservative and macho society, this would have been deeply troubling. Men, not mothers, were meant to be in charge.
In a world that barred women from any official position of power, Agrippina had a remarkable degree of control and influence. But it couldn't last. Nero wasn't one to share power.
If he dies!
Especially with a family rival. Early in his reign, the young Emperor Nero was under the influence of his mother. But when Agrippina threatened to support the claim of her other son, Britannicus, Nero fought back.
What have you done? Help us! You! Do something!
Take him to my physician.
If he dies!
Then what, Mother?
By killing his stepbrother Britannicus, Nero eliminated a potential rival and sent a clear warning to Agrippina. He also gave Rome's people their first glimpse of his true, vicious nature. It was a dangerous move because public image really mattered.
What, as we might say today, was the mood on the streets? Well, when Nero came to power, Rome was the biggest city in the world, with a population of around 1 million. This was a metropolis of shocking inequality, with the very richest owning up to 400 slaves.
This part of Rome would have been crammed with plebs, ordinary citizens, many living in blocks of flats 3 stories high. Women here gave birth on average to 9 children in their lifetimes, although only half survived to the age of 10 because of disease.
You have to try to imagine the atmosphere of the place. It was edgy, it was charged, it was seething.
Nero knew he had to keep the plebs on side. He'd buy their favour with gifts, building gyms and baths. But there was a dark and unpredictable side to him. He was also said to have taken to the streets at night in disguise, looking for trouble.
Careful where you put your feet or I'll cut them off for you.
I must ask that you don't. Your emperor is very fond of his feet.
Please, I beg your mercy.
My tutor once taught me about mercy. But I've quite forgotten the lesson. Must have drunk too much wine. Call your wife to me. She's not very pretty, is she? No matter. I'm a man of very broad tastes.
Please, my Lord Nero. You must let these people go.
I must. Do you want to take their place? I'm joking, of course. Let us find a new tavern. This one is boring me.
Suetonius tells us that some of these visits to the slums ended far worse, with stabbings and corpses thrown into sewers.
Nero's nighttime excursions show a lust for violence's sake. It's the polar opposite of the virtuous, restrained dignity that a good Roman was supposed to demonstrate.
For Agrippina, this reckless behaviour was deeply troubling, as was her diminishing influence over Nero. 5 years into his reign, she travelled to see him here at the Bay of Naples during the Festival of Minerva, hoping to patch things up. Matters quickly came to a head. During the festival, Nero suddenly became affectionate and attentive towards his mother, even giving her a gorgeous gift, a luxurious new boat.
But then a horror. One night, as she was travelling back across this bay from a boozy banquet, one of the crew gave a signal, and a lead weight came crashing down to the cabin, killing the man beside her and throwing Agrippina and one of her maidservants into the water. The servant, thinking that this would save her, cried out that she was the emperor's mother. One of Nero's henchmen pushed her under the waves.
Miraculously, Agrippina escaped the attack and sought refuge in her villa. But Nero wasn't about to give up the hunt.
I bring word from your son, the Emperor. He is shocked by your accident. He waits anxiously for news of your health.
I just need some time to rest. Tell him I will come and see him in a day or so. Let me find my servants to attend to your needs. You must be weary after your journey here.
Rome's politics had long been bloody. But to order the murder of your own mother was unprecedented and violated the central Roman values of piety and virtue. The story of how Nero turned this appalling crime into a PR triumph helps us to understand how political power worked in ancient Rome.
At this point, Nero still cared enough about his public image to put out a fake news story, claiming that Agrippina had actually tried to kill him. Historian Edward Bispham believes he got away with this with the oldest trick in the book: bribery.
The density and the horror of the things that Nero did ought to have damaged him, but they don't because of the scale of his attempt to win the plebs over. Nero's popularity with the plebs is very considerable, and it rests on his ability to deliver what the Roman poet Juvenal called bread and circuses. This is what keeps the plebs content. Nero is good at making sure that corn supply is maintained so that the plebs don't starve, and he is a showman, and so he's giving them not just the same games that their forefathers would have had, but more games, bigger games, better plays, more singing, more chariot racing, more wild beast fights. This popularity of the plebs is a firewall that protects him from rivals within the Senate, but also protects him from the effects of scandals.
But Nero was incapable of staying in favour for long. What he did next was considered almost as shocking as killing your own mother. Something that seems harmless to us. He took up acting.
You have to remember that this was a society where any kind of a performer, an actor, a singer or a dancer, were considered to be the same social rank as prostitutes. Basically, untouchable lowlifes.
It's hard to overstate how great a taboo this was for Roman society.
Hear ye, O lords of the underworld.
To the horror of the senators, Nero planned to perform in public on the biggest possible stage at Rome's preeminent theatrical festival.
From every corner of the sky, let the loud thunders roll. Hurl thy fires.
For Rome senators, this was like a prime minister or a president going on a TV reality show, only worse.
Send thy three-forked flaming bolt.
It was embarrassing, it was humiliating, and it was politically destabilising. Because if Rome's emperor looked a fool, then Rome's empire looked foolish for putting up with him.
Let night stay on forever.
He will destroy us all. We must stop him.
Cover with endless darkness, boundless crimes.
I'm afraid it is too late for that.
But it wasn't just the stage appearances. There were wild tales of sexual deviance, orgies with elaborate role-play involving men, women, children and animals. The emperor's immoral behaviour was damaging his reputation and undermining support for his rule. But Nero just didn't care. He'd killed his stepbrother and his mother and got away with it. He thought he was untouchable. But he was wrong. In 64 AD, 10 years into Nero's tumultuous reign, Rome was hit by a terrifying disaster that would destroy his reputation with the ordinary people of Rome. One night, next to the Circus Maximus, the great chariot racing stadium, a fire broke out. It tore through Rome's tightly packed streets and burned for 6 days.
Hundreds of people died, and a third of the city was destroyed. It was the greatest disaster this place had ever known, and came to be known as the Great Fire of Rome. Rome was so traumatized that quickly rumors started to fly that the fire had been started on the orders of Emperor Nero himself. And men and women started to whisper that the playboy emperor had been spotted strumming his lyre and singing while the city burned.
For once, the stories of Nero's excess weren't true. He wasn't even in Rome. Our best source, Tacitus, puts Nero in Antium that night, 30 miles away. But the rumours didn't have to be true to seriously rock Nero's popularity. What he did next rubbed salt in the wound. There was some rebuilding, but the emperor seized hundreds of acres of the city for a magnificent new palace. Neglecting his traumatised city and its people, he obsessed over his incredible new home. We know from written descriptions that it was an unsurpassed wonder of Roman architecture and art. The palace was lost for more than 1,000 years, buried 13 metres beneath the streets of Rome. But today, we're able to explore its fabled corridors once more.
I can't tell you what a treat it is to be here. This is what remains of the Domus Aurea, Nero's legendary golden house, and it's been undergoing a massive programme, conservation for years. So it's only now that we're beginning to get a true sense of just how extraordinary it was.
Welcome to the Domus Aurea, the house of Nero.
Thank you, and what a room to meet in. This is incredible. So what would this originally have been used for?
This is the most important room of this part of Domus Aurea. Probably was a dining room or a working room by Nero with his friends or ambassadors, and is a masterpiece of Roman architecture.
I mean, it's amazing. So what I can see, so the bricks and the cement and even the whitewash, so almost all of this is the original Roman?
Almost all of the structure is original. And you can see there, for example, the remains of the decoration in marble of this room.
What really strikes you, though, is this incredible oculus, so this hole in the dome, because the light is just pouring in here.
The name of the Domus Aurea came from the use of some materials, for example, the golden leaves used in the decoration, but especially for the use of the light in the architecture.
Amazing. A palace of light.
A palace of light.
Nero's golden house was a wonder of the age. Walls were studded with precious stones. The dining room even had a ceiling that rotated to mimic the heavens. And there was a 120-foot-high statue of the sun god, Sol, or was it, as some said, Nero himself. These halls once thronged with hundreds of staff and slaves, all at the beck and call of an increasingly out-of-touch dictator.
When the building was finally finished, one Roman author tells us that Nero simply said, "At last I have shelter fit for a human."
Nero didn't seem to care what people thought of his obscene new palace. His response to any murmurings of dissent was to eliminate any potential opposition. In 65 AD, a plot to kill the emperor was uncovered. Its ringleaders included several high-ranking senators. Nero executed anyone he believed to be connected with the conspiracy. When even loyal Seneca, his old tutor, was implicated in the plot, Nero granted him a uniquely Roman form of mercy, allowing him to take his own life.
Take him.
Romans viewed suicide as a noble way to die, a view that's radically different to our own and deeply troubling for a modern audience.
What kind of attitude did the Romans have to suicide?
For Romans, suicide could be acceptable and indeed quite praiseworthy under certain circumstances. So if a general lost a battle disastrously, he might vindicate his honor by killing himself, and that was actually seen as a praiseworthy thing to do.
Around this time, it almost seems that there's a more kind of robust philosophical rationale for suicide.
Suicide almost is seen as a kind of road to freedom for someone whose circumstances are very constrained.
Nero had turned on even his loyal supporters, and after 14 years of rule, had alienated just about every sector of Roman society. The emperor had systematically eliminated all his enemies in the capital to shore up his own power. But he'd made a fatal miscalculation. Across Rome's vast empire, there were governors and generals with old Roman values and powerful armies under their command. And it was from their ranks that the decisive move against Nero would come.
In 68 AD, the governor of Spain, Galba, came out in open revolt against Nero. He was, he declared, not a servant of the emperor, but of SPQR, the Senate and the people of Rome. And then he ordered his troops to march on the city.
Nero was confident of defeating Galba, but when his troops began to desert en masse and join the rebels, he finally realised just how much he was despised. It was only the elite Praetorian Guard, effectively the emperor's personal security service, who now stood between Nero and Galba's rebel army.
The Praetorian Guard, 6,000 strong, were a potent force in Roman politics. It was the Praetorians who butchered the Emperor Caligula and his family when he'd overstepped the mark, and who'd chosen Claudius to replace him. They had the power to make or break an emperor.
As Nero prepared to flee Rome, he turned to the Praetorian Guards to cover his escape.
Why did you not come when I sent for you?
We received no call.
That may be. I must leave the city in the morning. I will need your men for my safe passage. I can count on your support and protection. I am your lord and emperor, and I demand your service!
My lord, you must be careful. Your singing voice.
To hell with my singing.
Is it such a terrible thing to die?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Nero, deserted even by his own guards, finally grasped the mortal danger he was in.
Guards. Phaon. Come attend your emperor. Wait.
Spores, come. We must leave now.
But where to? Where are we going? Wait, my lord.
Come. Let us hurl ourselves into the Tiber. It will carry us either to safety or our eternal liberty.
My lord, I've come from the Praetorian camp. They too have sided with the traitor Galba.
My gentle Phaon hasn't abandoned me.
We must leave Rome. We must be quick and quiet. There is a curfew in force, and our presence will attract attention.
By dawn, Nero had reached the outskirts of Rome, where he took refuge in the villa of Phaon, who was one of his few remaining loyal servants. The historian Suetonius tells us in vivid detail about the last moments of Nero's reign.
With soldiers closing in, Nero was running out of options.
The senators say they will beat me to death with iron bars in the Forum. What an end is this for an emperor of Rome? I must hasten my own end. What an artist the world is losing. Oh, if only I knew how. Will not one of you make the ultimate sacrifice? Show your emperor how it is done. My dear Epaphroditus. Will you take the sword? Take it. Show me the way to eternity. Do to yourself as I would. Wait, they're coming. What loyalty?
Nero's death marked the end of Rome's first imperial dynasty. In his thirst for excess, he'd alienated the powerful and played with the weak, and he paid the ultimate price.
The Senate and the army declared Galba emperor. The Roman author Tacitus tells us that it took a little bit of time for the significance of this to sink in. Although Nero's death was at first welcomed with joy, it then caused mixed emotions, not only in the city among senators and people, but also among all the legions and generals. For the secret of the empire was now revealed, that an emperor could be made elsewhere than in Rome. Galba was very definitely not made in Rome. He was a provincial governor, he was a rebel general, and he had no connection whatsoever to Augustus's family. Critically, what he did have, however, to support his claim was the backing of a powerful army. Nero's shaming downfall ushered in a volatile age when emperors seized power by the sword and lived in constant fear of conspiracy and revolt. But Even so, brilliant leaders would emerge to conquer new territories and build spectacular monuments and bring even greater glory to Rome.
But whatever they did, they had to be sure to cultivate a power base, to nurture support in all sections of society. From the Roman elite and the powerful army, to the lowly plebs on the streets of the city. And the next dynasty of emperors showed they'd learned that lesson. And they gambled everything on a monument to violence, unrivaled in history. Emperor Galba lasted barely 6 months before he too was murdered in the Forum of Rome. The imperial title seemed like the ultimate poison chalice, as no fewer than 4 emperors ruled in the year after Nero's suicide.
Out of the carnage emerged this man, the Emperor Vespasian. Now, he was determined to nourish the security of the Flavian dynasty. His bloodline and that of his 2 sons, Titus and Domitian, and at the same time to win over the hearts of the people of Rome. And his strategy? To build the largest arena the world had ever seen. What was originally called the Flavian Amphitheatre, the Colosseum. The Romans can seem like us. They're educated, they're literate, they're masters of political spin. Their technology is a precursor to ours, and their art fills our museums. But nothing makes them feel stranger or more alien than the slaughter in the arena of animals and humans for entertainment.
The Colosseum was a desperate attempt by the new dynasty to win the favour of the people of Rome. The citizens of the empire would be crucial to their efforts to put down roots after the chaos unleashed by Nero.
Where I'm walking now was once actually a massive lake that stood right at the heart of a ridiculously excessive palace and garden complex built on the orders of the Emperor Nero. Now, it is no coincidence whatsoever that this was the spot chosen by the Emperor Vespasian to construct his grand new amphitheatre. It's really interesting Vespasian chose that particular site to build the Colosseum.
Vespasian wants to really contrast his reign with that of Nero. Nero had built himself a huge private pleasure palace right in the heart of the city, and it's really unpopular. What Vespasian is doing is saying, here I am, I'm building a huge pleasure palace for the people where once had stood a lake that had only been for an emperor's enjoyment.
When we think of Rome, we often think of the Colosseum. It does become something that really defines the city.
Absolutely, and it's a profound symbolic statement that ordinary people were going to get a lot out of having Vespasian in charge.
As the construction of the Flavian Amphitheatre progressed, Romans must have wondered whether Vespasian could deliver on his promise. The building would eventually become known as the Colosseum, after the Colossus, a massive statue of Nero that once stood nearby. The Colosseum took a decade to build, but Vespasian died before he could witness the opening of his masterpiece. And that meant that the pressure of the opening of the Colosseum would have been felt most acutely by another man. His son, the Emperor or Caesar Titus. Now, he wanted to secure the empire not just for himself, but for his father's dynasty, the Flavians, including for his ambitious younger brother, Domitian, who'd succeed him.
Touch of nerves, brother.
Must have eaten something that disagreed with me.
Well, surely nothing would dare disagree with you, Caesar.
I do regret our father did not live to see this day.
Perhaps he had a lucky escape.
Meaning?
Meaning it is you, Caesar, that will either face the consequences of the old man's folly, or reap the rewards of his remarkable vision.
The shadow of Nero loomed large. The bloody demise of the despot was a reminder of the fate that could befall an emperor who lost the support of his subjects.
Although Titus was emperor, that didn't mean that he was secure. The jury was still out on whether Rome would accept this upstart Flavian dynasty. Then, to add to his challenges, as soon as he was in power, disaster struck.
Just 2 months into Titus's reign, Mount Vesuvius erupted, obliterating the towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum. A year later, a 3-day fire ravaged Rome, followed by a plague.
The Romans were superstitious in the extreme, and events like this were taken as a clear sign that the gods were displeased. Now, Titus's hold on power was already shaky, and there was a very real possibility that it would evaporate.
So, pressure was mounting on Titus to prove the doubters wrong. Everything was riding on the success of the Colosseum, and failure would mean that the gods were right. Titus came out fighting. The arena would open with a mind-boggling 100 days of games, with free entry to those lucky enough to get a ticket. It would be down to the organiser, or editor, to deliver a show to remember.
Caesar! Is everything ready? Is everything ready, or isn't it?
Yeah, everything is ready, Caesar.
Then let us begin.
On that opening day in the early summer of 80 AD, the stakes couldn't have been higher.
They seem happy enough.
For now. They want blood. Blood, blood, and more blood.
And that's what I'm giving them, brother.
Citizens of Rome, welcome to this, the first of 100 days in celebration of the glory of the Empire. To let the games begin!
That went better than expected.
Domitian, do shut up.
It never fails to impress me just how vast this place is. But it's also chilling because, and I don't think I'm being over fanciful here, if you stop for a moment, you can almost hear the crowd baying for blood.
Titus's games were a chance for the emperor to show off his power over a vast empire that stretched across continents.
Behold! From Africa, I present a beast, the likes of which you will not believe!
My eyesight, as you know, is not the best. But that looks very much to me like a herd of goats.
The Venationes was a popular event in the Roman Games, and the crowd would have expected a display of savagery. This first event of Titus's 100 Days of Games was the Venationes, the slaughter of wild beasts, a popular Roman tradition. As the empire expanded, Romans were fascinated by the exotic animals they encountered. Gathering and transporting animals to be used in the arenas became an empire-wide industry, a display of power over territories that stretched all the way from Scotland to Jerash, here in Jordan.
It was such a big operation, even the Roman army got involved. The animals would be recorded at busy cities like this one, boxed up and then exported over the waterways and the intercontinental system of roads that the Romans had constructed with such care and skill.
Such was the impact of the Roman appetite for these animals that many species were simply wiped out.
As the author Petronius put it, the wild beast is searched out in the woods at great price. Strange, ravening creatures freight the fleets, and the padding tiger is wheeled into a gilded palace to drink the blood of men while the crowds applaud.
The Venationes were a way for the wealthy to demonstrate their power, and at the top of that pile was Titus, displaying his preeminence over the whole empire.
This mosaic would originally have decorated the grand villa of a wealthy man from North Africa. And it tells us how people use the Venationes to show off. Basically, it's a kind of storyboard. So you've got 4 leopards pitted against 4 hunters in the games. And you can see where they've been skewered and they're spurting blood. Now, because the animals are damaged goods, their owner is asking for money in recompense, and the man who put on the games, Megarius, obliges. Just in the middle there, you can see somebody coming in carrying a tray of loot, and each of those bags of money contains 1,000 denarii. That is a huge amount of cash. Put together, it's around £250,000 in today's money, and the writing in the middle rams home the message. This is what it is to be rich. This is what it is to be powerful.
We're told a staggering 5,000 beasts were slaughtered on the opening day of Titus's games. An epic display of his imperial might.
Is everything proceeding to your satisfaction, Caesar?
You had us worried there with the games.
All part of the plan, Caesar.
I don't need to remind you what's at stake here.
What my dear brother means to say is, mess this up, and he'll have the gladiators sharpen their swords on your skull.
I understand.
These games were costing a fortune, not to mention the financing of building the Colosseum in the first place. When Titus's father Vespasian came to power, he'd inherited an empire almost bankrupt from the excesses of Nero. So how on earth did he pay for all of this? A discovery in 2001 reveals how the Flavians funded the construction.
This inscribed stone was originally mounted on the outside of the Colosseum, and the letters that you can see tell us that these were carved in 400 years or so after the building was finished. They read that a senator called Lampadius gave money to the Colosseum once it had become run down in order for it to be restored. But then archaeologists spotted all these little holes and realised that these were where brass letters were originally fixed to the stone. And if you join the dots together, this is what they say. The Emperor Caesar Vespasian Augustus built this new amphitheatre with the spoils of war. The Romans were blatantly advertising the fact that Colosseum had been built with foreign plunder, dirty money.
And much of that money came from one city in particular.
Just a stone's throw from the Colosseum is this spectacular victory arch, the Arch of Titus. When Vespasian became emperor, his son Titus was in Judea, crushing a Jewish revolt with absolute ferocity and laying siege to Jerusalem.
The sack of Jerusalem is one of the horror stories of humanity, both because of the destruction of the sacred temple and the scale of the slaughter.
There's Titus being crowned by the goddess of victory, and over here is his train, fat with loot, including the treasured menorah, a sacred candelabrum with 7 arms that was said to have been carried by Moses from Egypt to end up in its resting place in the temple at Jerusalem.
The Arch of Titus is a shameless advert for Roman ruthlessness and tells us how the Romans used blood money to fund vanity projects. Once again, Titus was using lavish building projects to boast his power and potency. Even the seating in the Colosseum was all part of Titus's grand strategy. It showed all of Rome who was in charge and where everyone else sat in the pecking order.
Starting with the emperor himself, the seating plan was an incarnation of Roman society. The Emperor Titus and his family, including his younger brother Domitian, would have sat in the imperial box, which was probably over there.
Then, radiating out upwards, the influential senators and patricians were on the first level, the equites or knights on the second. Up here, separated from the more important high-status citizens, were the plebs, the ordinary people. The very poorest had the rubbish seats right at the back. But it didn't stop there. Above the plebs were the women, rich and poor alike. Rome was a patriarchal society, and women were expected to stay at home and manage the household. Their attendance at the games was somewhat frowned on. The perfect Roman woman demonstrated modesty and chastity, very different to the values prized in the ideal Roman man, a kind of heroic manliness. And the main event on the opening day of the Colosseum was a uniquely Roman perversion of that manly virility, the headline act that so much was riding on. At the Colosseum, the success of the opening day would be decided by the people's favourite, the highlight of the games, the gladiators.
Get this animal to his cell and out of the way!
No way to speak to a champion.
Priscus?
Thanks to the celebrated poet Martial, who witnessed the games, we know that the 2 gladiators who fought one another were called Verus and Priscus. Now, these 2 would have been well known to the crowd, celebrities in their own right, a bit like when Muhammad Ali met Joe Frazier in Manila.
Priscus?
Yes, Caesar.
You are to fight Verus. Are you ready to die?
Yes, Caesar.
Are you afraid to die?
No, Caesar.
I make you an offer. One which will motivate you to fight well and hard. To the one of you that kills the other, I shall grant freedom. Can you give me a fight worthy of my clemency?
May the gods show you their favor.
At the Colosseum, there was also the rare chance for the crowd to let their emperor know what they thought of him, something they'd been deprived of for over 100 years since the demise of the limited democracy of the Republic. Here they could cheer, or howl, or just stay quiet. A kind of oral opinion poll.
To be met by silence rather than adulation was a body blow for the ambitious.
So Titus was taking a big gamble by addressing the crowd directly. A response was inevitable, good or bad. Any feelings of animosity could easily spread and multiply through the mass.
Citizens, is this not the greatest spectacle in the history of the Empire?
The acclamation by the crowd was essential to secure his leadership. All that was left was the final headline act. The gladiators. The final act of Titus's opening day at the Colosseum was the most popular with the people of Rome.
Gladiators!
At last. They cheer louder for you than for the new emperor.
We seem to be obsessed with gladiators in the modern world, and we think that the Romans were too. There is this idea of virtue, and that a good gladiator can encapsulate that.
Yes, what's also remarkable is that most of these gladiators are slaves or they're prisoners of war. They're the lowest of the low in Roman society, and yet here they are giving displays of Roman courage and virtus, which is a sort of combination of bravery, courage and excellence. And it's what they think has won them the empire in the first place.
And I guess that's very important. It's not pure bloodlust, which is how we think of it.
Absolutely. Now, of course, by the time of the Emperor Titus, hardly any Romans had actually ever seen a battlefield, but they want to see a version of those traditional values in a modern setting.
Need no introduction!
He's gonna give them one anyway. My money's on the big one.
I just hope it's not over too soon.
Left! The bringer of brutality! A rough, a tough, a vicious spirit! Slippery, pretty boy dresser! By order of the Emperor, one of these gladiators will die! The fight commence!
Titus was hoping that the grand finale of his opening day would go down in history. The poet Martial writes that Verus and Priscus were evenly matched, and both fought with equal determination. Neither would show the sign of surrender, raising of a finger.
Why doesn't one of them just yield?
Because to yield is to die, idiot.
Both have yielded at the same time.
As blind as Tiresias.
No, look. A dilemma. I suppose both must die.
Remarkably, thanks to Martial's poetry, we know that on the opening day of the Colosseum, almost 2,000 years ago, the gladiator fight between Priscus and Verus ended in a draw.
What are you?
The crowd had been deprived of their moment to watch death in action. Titus would have to think quickly to pacify them, or he'd have a riot on his hands.
Get them up on their feet. Get them both up!
But as the fight ended in an unprecedented stalemate, Titus had a critical decision to make. The success of the day, quite possibly of his own future, hinged on the crowd's reaction.
Gladiators, you fought bravely and well. By decree, one of you should go free, and one of you should die. But I have noted your courage and your commitment, and decided to present you both with these wooden staffs. Both shall go free!
Caesar decrees. Both shall go free! Both shall go free!
We know that Titus's act of mercy caused a sensation.
The Roman poet Martial, who was an eyewitness to the games, wrote this in celebration. This has happened under no glorious leader but you, Caesar. Two fought and both won. Now, I'm sure like any sensible Roman artist, Martial was just buttering up the emperor. But even so, PR like this told the world that the inaugural games had been a great success, something that brought the Roman people together. As Martial also wrote, rather overexcitedly, Rome has been restored to her true glory. And under you, Caesar, the delights that belonged to a master now belong to the people.
Titus's 100 days of inaugural games were a huge success and cemented his position in the eyes of the people. His future looked secure. But Titus didn't get to enjoy the rewards of his and his father's achievement for long. Around 18 months after the opening day, he died from a sudden illness. Titus's brother Domitian succeeded him as emperor. Crucially, unlike Titus, Domitian failed to win the crowd, and in 96 AD, he was assassinated. His death marked the end of the second of Rome's imperial dynasties, the Flavians. The Colosseum itself, though, lived on. The building would flourish as Rome grew to its greatest extent. Within a generation, the men who met here ruled over 21% of the world's population, a fifth of the globe. For another 500 years, the Colosseum remained a place where emperors sought to win the adoration of their people. Some of them, like Titus, were wise enough to stay on the right side of their subjects. Many more would meet a gory end, like the despot Nero. The idea of Rome still lives. Their language, culture, law all shape our lives today. And their great architecture, technology and works of art can take our breath away. But let's not forget that none of this would have been possible without the people of Rome and without the 200 million slaves who powered the Roman engine, the men and women who lived and died to make the Roman Empire great.